How's everyone doing? Good? Good. Welcome. It's going to be a fun day. My name is Mitch Joel. If you want, that's where you can follow me. I'm going to talk about the future of the web and why it may or may not be social. And if you know anything about me, I'm fingers crossed that it will be social because I'm sort of banking my career and life on it. So it's got to work out for me. There are actual forces, though, that are primarily working against this cause. And there are things that you and I are doing every single day that's actually, I believe, perpetuating a web that may, in fact, not be all that social as we know it or hopefully as we would like it to be. We have habitually been this way. We've been this way since going back to the early days of coming together as a community. We didn't leave our windows open, right? You would close our shades and sort of not let those prying eyes watch us because we tend to have that type of humanity against us. And the truth of the matter is that if you push this to the web and everything we do on the internet, we're doing many, many things that we do want inherently to be private, right? We tell things to a search engine that we would never want to tell our spouses, wives, friends, and others. By the way, I realize how uncool it is to quote yourself, but it's something I said a while ago, and I think it bears repeating. But it's actually true. You can think about something like if you're in a workforce and you're suddenly realized by speaking to your doctor that you've been, God forbid, diagnosed with MS. It's not something you necessarily want to tell your family or friends right away. You want to go online. You want to do some research. You want to find out about support, how long it might take, others potentially who you'd want to connect to. Now, we take it for granted, but all of these search engines, whether we're talking about Google, Yahoo, Bing, whatever, are a business. And their business is to leverage this data and information so that they can either send advertising your way or give it to a third party so that they can better target you with advertising, because that's the cost of all this free, great goodness that we have in the online world. And people forget about that. And so we have to be able to accept as an audience and as a world that the more information we input into these systems, the more public that information is. And we have to be really comfortable with that. And I think it runs very counterintuitive to how we've been as human beings traditionally to date. And you can see this as the evolution evolves. Facebook hits 600 million people connect to it. And everyone feels like Facebook is constantly doing this bait and switch on us with our privacy. And I don't believe that they're really, I don't know if they are doing it or not doing it. I think they're a business. And I think their goal is to make money, lots of money, revenue. And I believe that Mark Zuckerberg is inherently someone who wants to change the world. I've met him a couple times, actually met him at a TED event. And I think he does want to change the world, but let's not kid ourselves. It's not a non-profit organization. It's not a social cause. It's there to actually grow a business. And so because of that, that's one of the forces that works against us. They change a privacy and services agreement, and everyone freaks out. And there's it's like Attica suddenly on Facebook. But that's the truth of the platform. So that's one force that's working against us. The other force that I think is a bigger force, and one that we don't necessarily talk a lot about, is our own narcissism. The old web was really about you go to a portal, you're looking at Simpatico, Yahoo, AOL, whatever it might be, and you're seeing information, news from around the world that's curated by professional journalists and people like that. And now if you open up your browser, whether you're using Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer, what are the tabs you have? You have your own Facebook page. You have your Twitter feed. It's very narcissistic, isn't it? Right? Suddenly, instead of looking at a world that's open and there for you, we're looking at our own RSS feeds to our own life. And suddenly, our world is really small. An average person on Facebook has about 120 connections. That's a lot of narcissism going on. If your main gateway to this world is your own wall and your own Facebook and status updates, that creates a level of non-socialness, actually. You might be social within your current social circle, but that's not really a social activity of opening up and experiencing and trying to learn more. And so these are really big things that are happening that not many people are talking about. We're like, hey, Facebook is really social. It's social networking. But it's not. With 120 people, most networks are very, very small and personal. That doesn't make the network there social. It just makes us less and less social. The case before that was my RSS reader. I use Google Reader. And so when I'm tracking blogs, and I'm sure I follow some of you in the room, I'm only following the people that I am creating for myself. So my ability to have any level of serendipity slides away. Thankfully, in platforms like Twitter, where you can follow more and more people and they're connected to other people, that creates more serendipity. But that, too, is sort of a new thing. It's a new phenom. It's not something we always had. And so we've come to this really weird place where everything we say can and will be used against us in the court of public opinion. I'm quoting myself again. But it's true, isn't it, right? And you can say something on your Facebook wall right now, and the truth of the matter is it may or may not be used by your future employer against you, or it may be used by you or not by a friend. By the way, I'm not talking about negative things. It could be positive things or neutral things as well. But this is really true. We have a situation now where everything we say is being recorded. This is being recorded. But everything we do, even if we want to record it or not, is being recorded. I've been in instances where I'll go to a concert and I'm sitting with a friend having a great time, and I flip on Twitter sometime later in the evening and I realize that somebody was sitting 3 rows back telling everybody in the world that I was at that concert. And so the information, even if I want to share it or I don't want to share it, is still now out in the public, isn't it? And so whether or not brands and companies embrace this and put out on their website that they offer, let people review and say whatever they want, it's almost irrelevant at this point, isn't it? I mean, it's irrelevant almost if I have comments on my blog, isn't it? Because you all have publishing platforms now. So if you think I'm being a jerk or you think I'm a genius, you can leverage your own platform to share that now. And so it pushes it out even further. But again, this makes us as human beings nervous. That's why we have those sort of laughs when I talk about this stuff, because it's awkward and it's strange and we're really not used to it. So how public should we be? Is everything public? Should I be paranoid? I mean, these are the questions I think that lead not to an open and social platform. They lead to questions that everyone asks, and I can be in Los Angeles, I can be in Oslo, Norway, and people ask me fundamentally at a business and personal level these same questions. How public should we be? Is everything we do public? And should I be paranoid about this? Because our default position is actually to be secretive. And our default position is to be a little bit narcissistic. And our default position is actually, I believe, to be like this. And if you don't believe me, have a kid. I've got a young child, and I think intuitively you want to think that my child will share. And it's amazing that we have to teach us as human beings to share. Our natural instinct is not to share. Trust me. No, mine. Those are the 2 first words every kid says, right? And listen, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist, although I play one on TV. You may believe this or you may not. These are just things I see as someone who likes to hack the media and look at things and understand why we do things and why we're there. And so as I said before, this is being recorded. And that makes me wonder, how does anything go missing? How do people have acts of violence in a city anymore? They're not only just cameras everywhere in terms of signposts and stuff, but we all have in our, right here, I can record anything. I can record it in text, I can record it in images, I can record it in audio, I can record it in video. Not only can I record it, by the way, but I can publish it instantly to the world for free. How does stuff go missing? How does a car get stolen anymore? How do we lose anything in this world? And these are going to be some of the things that I think are also going to evolve and change. And these are the things that I actually think are really good, which is why I hope for a more social world. But I think it's also things for the people who aren't really aware of this that makes them really nervous about this. These are the things that keeps them away from it because they're freaking out about the fact that you can actually record and do all this stuff anywhere and everywhere. And so we have things that come out and it freaks people out. Like WikiLeaks comes out and people are like, oh my God, this is the end of the world, because it is scary. It's scary to know if you're in business or part of a school or anything that anyone anywhere can take information and upload it anonymously to a platform, server, whatever, and have that information either curated or not, but disseminated and distributed to the world. What's to stop anything from happening like that? And the answer is nothing, because once a platform like this comes out, it's really, really scary. Now, you can ask me politically how I feel about WikiLeaks. You can ask me physiologically how I feel about WikiLeaks, or psychologically. And I actually think it's a pretty amazing platform. I believe that platforms and technologies are agnostic. They're neither good nor bad. It's how we use them that makes them good or bad. And I think people use social platforms in amazingly powerful ways, and I think people use social platforms in very silly ways or erroneous ways that causes people, everyone else who's not engaged on them, to maybe take a step back or a deep breath or to see what's happening with them. And this and other stuff is making us, I believe, a little less social in the end, because the worlds get smaller, they don't expand. There are instances and people in this room who are super great at breaking down those walls. Some of them you'll hear on this stage. Some of them are in the audience. I believe that I'm one of them as well. I don't want the world to be less social. I want the world to be more social. And all these examples that I'm sharing with you and trying to get you to think about in terms of how we leverage this network to connect us all is a really powerful thing, because I think it should be used for good. I think we default to the 2% of the world that's evil. 2% of the world is probably evil in the end. It's just magnified a lot when you have 2 billion people online, right? It becomes this bigger city, and so we freak out a little bit more. But this is an important thing to really embrace, that the stuff that makes us scared is usually driven by the fact that our value system has to shift and adapt in this new world. When I speak to adults about young people and their use of texting, for example, and they shake their heads and think it's the end of civilization because young people say LOL instead of laughing out loud, which is like, what? But this is how people feel. And what they're not doing is they're not understanding that the values that they have come from a world when this stuff didn't exist. When I was 12, 13 years old, maybe a little younger, I would come home from school, I would throw my knapsack down, I'd sit in front of the TV, and I would drool in front of Batman, watching TV, until my parents said, like, go do your homework or come and have dinner. I have a niece who's 16 years old, and when she comes home, she does the same thing. She turns on the TV, but she also fires open her laptop, and she also has her mobile device, and she also has her iPod there. And she's collaborating with her friends on her homework, and she's working together, and she's leveraging platforms like Wikipedia, whether you think it's right or wrong. I happen to think it's brilliant. They're creating videos, they're writing stories, they're doing things that I never did. They're consuming media, they're also creating media, and they're also more media savvy than I ever was. I often wish that I was alive now so I could be even smarter when I get older. I'm going to be stupid now because I had nothing but just TV blasting me one way in the face, right? So what do we know? I think that this is the important part. What we actually know is that it's not good to be scared. I used to do a lot of martial arts training, and my coach used to say that fear is an acronym, and the acronym stands for false evidence appearing real. It's not really true. And what we need to do, and you've seen this whether it's a great entrepreneur or a great social activist, is pushing through that fear, that thing that we don't know or understand. And we have to be able to do this to keep the web social. I believe it's paramount, because what we do know is we live in actually an amazing world. We live in a world where everyone is a publisher. My background was in journalism and publishing magazines, and I spent a ton of very, very painful times calling editors at places like the Montreal Gazette and wherever saying, please let me write this article about so-and-so, and they're like, who are you, hang up, right? I had to sell someone the idea that the content that I had to create, the art inside me, the work I had to do was valid. And that was very debilitating to me over years. I came up with a trick, by the way. I'll share with you the trick. I was in the music industry. So what I would do is I'd call Universal Music, the big record company at the time, and I'd say, listen, if you get me Gene Simmons from Kiss, an interview, I'll get you some place in the Montreal Gazette. And they'd say, okay. And then I'd call the Montreal Gazette, and I'd say, hey, listen, if you give me some space, I'll get you Gene Simmons from Kiss. And they'd say, okay. And I'd like, perfect. And that was basically it. That was my trip. That's how I got anything done in my life. But the powerful thing happened to me, at least in 2002, when I started embracing my blog, 6 Pixels of Separation. I realized I don't need the editors of Ad Age or Marketing Magazine or any of these people. All I need is the ability to connect to people. And all I had to do is create relevant content that would connect. And that's what I did. And so we live in this world suddenly where we're all publishers. We also live in a world where we got to be able to shut up and accept the fact that it's free. I think we should have rights. I really do. But it goes back to what I said at the beginning. These are free platforms. They're free for a reason. They take free what we give them and use that information to make money. I mean, that's what it is. So we have to have a social contract that agrees that whether or not we're going to follow the terms and services or even like them, we have to be prepared for the ramifications of signing up and using a free service. Now, would it be great if Facebook said we're going to charge, and what that fee is going to constitute is your ability to really control all this? Sure, it would, but that's not the world we live in because it's not a social cause, it's a business, and that's how they're running their business. The other great thing about this information is we're quickly moving towards this world of big data, where it's not just about the little things, but it's the aggregate of all this information. And as we get better at technology and leveraging this, we're going to get better at selecting it. So right now, when you go onto Google or Facebook and you type in something and you get a result and you're like, how is that ad linked to that, right? It's like I mentioned once to someone, good luck with your weight, and suddenly I'm getting like all these lose weight ads on the right-hand side. It makes no sense. It's because the data sets are learning, right? And this is still new times. We are going to get to the point where it understands more semantically the types of content we're producing, and it's getting there, and it's getting better. The other thing you need to know is that as this gets better and as the technology develops, it's worth more money to the company that has it. So as they get better at accumulating this data and pushing this data out, hopefully the better they'll be able to get at giving you services you actually want versus things that annoy you, and hopefully give you more functionality you can use. Now you can see how this teeters right in the middle, right? This is agnostic. It can go really good or it can get really ugly. Now, we have to hope that these businesses understand the value in all of us being connected and how we work to leverage it. And I think you're seeing some of that in terms of retractions. We're seeing more and more retractions. If you're following that whole thing with the Gap, right? Gap puts their logo out, everyone thinks it sucks, and they're like, okay, it sucks, let's get rid of it, right? They start listening more to people, and they're understanding it. But this data is going to be very important as it moves forward. We're also in a world of one line of connectivity. That's us. You see, we don't have to go to the internet anymore. We don't have to go home to go online. We all have this power amazingly in the palm of our hands. So when I sit down and work with brands and they talk to me about their web strategy and their mobile strategy, I think it's a stupid strategy. I think they should be talking about their strategy. When a consumer is connected and they don't really care if it's their mobile or their iPad or whatever, they're connected to it. Location aware. All of your devices are telling people where you are, but now we're proactively putting this information out there. So we're using things like Foursquare and Gowalla and other places to tell people, hey, I'm at TEDxConcordia. This is pretty cool. Connect to me if you want. And so we're leveraging these new things that are making us more social if you engage them. There's nerves with this. Like, I don't want to tell people where I am. First of all, they'll know I'm not home and break into my home, which we've had as well. There are things like Please Rob Me that were out for a while, which they were triangulating the data and information to not only say that you weren't home, but where you lived. And so now that's changing, right? And the world's changing a little bit more. Too many secrets. If you've seen the movie Sneakers, that's my little tribute to that. This is the big downfall, for me at least, of WikiLeaks. It wasn't really WikiLeaks, it was the government. The problem the government has is they fundamentally start off at a position of secrecy and privacy. And if they didn't do that, and they started off with a position of open and transparency and just kept the stuff that really had to be secret, there'd probably less news and excitement around this. But there's not. And so when people have a default position of wall, I'm private, don't talk to me, don't look at me, it fundamentally will make your social experience less social, obviously. And so one of the things I tell people is I've resigned my privacy a little bit, not entirely. But I know that by having a platform out there, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, that I am, in essence, resigning my privacy a little bit. And I believe that to be a good thing. I think it's been good for me. Also, publishing. Is WikiLeaks a publisher? Yeah, they are a publisher. This is the new publishing. Any one of you can have a thought, text, images, audio, and video, and share it instantly and for free with the world. That's an amazing thing. That can make us more social. However, the fear and using it in a bad way can make people drive in the opposite direction from it. And I think we'll see more splintering as it comes out, and then how it retracts and comes back together. We'll just have to see how it plays out. We have information now in real time. So whether it's legal, credible, or not, somebody is involved in a plane crash in the Hudson River, they're the ones tweeting out, holy crap, I was just in a plane crash. And actually the word crap isn't true. They used a much worse word when they did this. But that's how the world found out about the Hudson River. It wasn't about CNN. It wasn't about CBC. It happened because we live in this real-time information platform. I will walk down the stage and there will be people who have already tweeted about what I said in real time. I won't even have a chance to catch my breath. But that's the reality of our world that makes it more social. Then we also have this credible anonymity, and I think this is going to be the big thing. Credible anonymity is going to be really important because now you go on to Amazon and you read a book review from Susie from wherever, and you're like, who's Susie? It doesn't matter, but she wrote something really credible. It doesn't really matter. What if you're the editor of one of the biggest editing magazines and you can't really say that publicly, that this is your job, but you have very important information about book reviews, and you've written thousands of them on Amazon? I think there will be a platform coming forward really soon where you can actually register and be a credible anonymous person, or think about that person who's diagnosed with MS, and you suddenly want to go onto a forum and talk about it with others who are like you, but you don't want to necessarily reveal who you are. Does that make you any less credible, even though you're anonymous? No, it doesn't. And WikiLeaks, I believe, is one of those things that's really pushing this idea forward, that you can be credible and anonymous even if you're just 4 people with a laptop in a Starbucks. This is a new model for us that we haven't seen before. And ultimately, what I want to end on is this, which is we're not ready. This stuff is moving really, really fast. It's really, really exciting. And I always say, stuff that looks weird and feels weird should, because it's weird. So when people say, how does Twitter make money? What I always say is new business models always look and feel weird. By the way, the answer to how Twitter makes money is they sell it to Google. That's how they make money. It's not going to be from you and I don't think, at this point. So I think part of it is accepting this new value system and understanding that we're going to live in a world as we evolve. I believe we're sort of in a bit of a media purgatory now, where we're trying this stuff, so we're not in hell and we're not really in heaven yet, but we're on our way to working with entrepreneurs and people who are making this really exciting. So I hope that leads to a more social world. I hope you'll consider, if you're not engaged, to open up more and more and to share who you are with people who matter, and not to close in and pull those digital shades down at night, because I think there's more value in the connections you make. And I know this to be true, because if it weren't true, you wouldn't be here at TED. you're here to make these connections, and you're here to be more social. And so my hope is that we actually have a very social future. And I hope you will join and connect to me as well. Have a great day, and thank you very much.